Hi everybody, welcome to Shivers. We're doing a late night movie review on the new movie Weapons that came out tonight, August 8th. This already has 100% in Rotten Tomatoes, still standing strong as of now at 100% in Rotten Tomatoes, so let's dig into it. I'm not going to go too much into the story of this one like I do for normal reviews. We're more going to point out some of the things in the background, some of the homages, some of the themes, things like that. If you don't want to hear any of that, feel free to fast forward to the end for the actual rating and review. So, getting started, this is a unique movie in that we get a whole bunch of different people's perspectives. I'm always a big fan of books where you're reading and every single chapter is a different person. Those are my absolute favorite books to read. So, from the get-go, structurally, this is a really cool movie. So we start with Justine. She is the teacher of this class of kids who have gone missing. Some time passes, nobody knows where these kids are. All of these people think something happened because of her. So one of the parents, we assume parents, paints witch on her car, and basically she's just the town outcast at this point. She's a bit of a drunkard. She's gotten a DUI before. She was fired from her last school because she had inappropriate contact with a student, but really she just drove that student home. She gave a student a hug and she got in trouble for it. So this is really somebody who is a stereotypical good teacher, good person, really kind-hearted, but all of her actual decisions cause things to just really not work out in her favor. She is secretly sleeping with this cop named Paul. Paul is your stereotypical cop, but from the perspective of we understand where he's coming from. So again, I don't want to spoil too much of the story, but there's another character named James who we also get the perspective of. James is this tweaker and he's just a really bad person, objectively bad person, bad kid. He's living in a tent in the middle of the woods and will do really anything to just get his fix. So much so that he starts breaking into people's houses, and Paul, the cop, sees him, finds him, and really just kind of takes his anger out on him. So not realizing that the actual cop car's camera is pointing towards him beating the crap out of James. So we have a little bit of a nod to the cop politics of things. Paul is, what we see from that perspective, a genuinely good guy. Somebody who got up on the wrong side of the bed, takes his anger out on the wrong people. So in seeing all of these different people's perspectives, we get to know them a little bit as characters, but it's more so to break the mold of these really stereotypical people, and do they lean into their stereotypes? And in this movie, that answer is yes. You know, Justine is this teacher who really just cares about all of these kids, but continues making the wrong decisions. Paul is this cop who has good intentions, but leans into his anger. James is this tweaker who has a lot of potential to just get clean and act right. He certainly has the drive to get things done, but continues to use and also use other people. We then have Archer, who is this dad who has this dream where he finally tells his son that he loves him, and he's never told his son that he loves him, and he's one of the 17 kids who have gone missing in this classroom. So this is a very stereotypical daddy issue dad. We get to the perspective of he's not really doing well at his job. He's not really engaged in society because he's just so focused on trying to find his kid. He goes to the police office and he's, tell me what's going on. Tell me what you guys are doing. And the police basically have no answer for him. So after that, we then have Alex. Alex is the only kid who did not get essentially kidnapped from this classroom. As you've probably seen in the trailers, all of the kids are running out of their houses with their arms sort of in this weird triangle shape. Don't know where they're going, don't know where they're running to, but we have all of this ring camera footage of these kids just running. Alex is the only one who does not get taken or under this possession of sorts. We save Alex's perspective for the very end. So all while the neighborhood is getting torn up, all while everybody's trying to figure out what's going on with these kids, it's not so much of a focus on looking for these kids as it is all a reflection on the people in the neighborhood and what tragedy does to people. Even in Archer, the father's dream. He dreams of this AK-47, and on it is the timestamp of when these kids all went missing, 2:17 in the morning. So there's a lot of political commentary behind this, which makes sense as to why the Rotten Tomatoes score is very high, because Rotten Tomatoes loves that stuff. As a horror fan, as me, for anybody who has listened to my reviews before, I don't. I last week did a review for Together, and I loved it because it's a simple story. We're talking about relationships, we're talking about a little bit of the supernatural, and it's just blatant. There's no real opinions that are shoved into your face. This one is more of that political side of things. However, from a good perspective, there is a lot to look for in the background. There is a lot of hidden symbology, hidden just from a film perspective, from a cinema perspective. That is where this movie really shines. Everything that's in the background, all of the shots, all the ways that this movie is physically done is really great. Even from Alex's perspective, he keeps going to get Campbell's soup to try to keep his parents fed. I'll get to that in a second. But in him going to the store and him being self-sufficient as this little kid, he goes from being the bullied, the underdog, to now we're just waiting for him to finally stand up for himself, or finally do something, and not just be this perpetual victim. From that Campbell's soup perspective, it really reminded me of the Chef Boyardee commercials from back in the day, where the can of soup would fall off of the shelf and roll and follow these kids home. That, whether intentional or not, really makes sense in relation to this movie, of they're all just sort of rolling down the street, don't know where they're going, but they have this pull to this destination. So this is where we'll get into spoiler territory. So fast forward a little bit if you don't want to hear it. The final character that we meet is Gladys. So Gladys is supposedly Aunt Gladys to Alex. Gladys is this very scary, long legs looking woman, and she's sick. So she's going to stay with Alex and his parents while she gets better. She's not sick. I mean, she is sick, but she, more than anything, is this sort of witch. It's really not explained what her background is. It's not explained at all what her purpose is of going there in the first place, but she's not doing well. She's sick, and so she has all of these tools in her tool belt to essentially take the life of these people, like kind of like a Death Eater in a way. So first thing that she does is do it to Alex's parents. They become these zombie figures, and so they have been very involved in Alex's life thus far. It is really this story of this bullied kid at school, but completely supported and loved at home. Whereas the majority of these other kids that are being taken, we see, especially from Archer's perspective, that these are not kids who are loved at home. And so are they running away? Are they escaping from a home? Again, all of this hidden symbology. So from Alex's perspective, bullied at school, but loved at home. Now his home life reflects a little bit of his school life. Everybody is abandoning him. It's the absent parent. Gladys has now turned his parents into these zombies, basically, and makes the comment that their life is not strong enough to make her better. So she needs youth. She needs something. So she sends Alex to school and says, give me an item from every single child in your classroom, and that will make me better, and I will be magically able to set your parents back to the way that they were. So he's like, oh my God, anything that will get my parents back to the way they were. Again, I always complain about kids in horror movies, and this is exactly why. If he stood up to her, if he did something, if he called the cops, it all hinges on Alex taking an action that he does not do until the absolute ending of this movie. So the entire time I'm flipping my hands and rolling my eyes because of this kid. You feel bad for him until you don't. So Alex goes to school, gets all these things from his classmates, brings them back to Gladys. Gladys does this spell, and that's where all the kids run. They run to Alex's house. They're now all just these zombie kids standing in the basement of Alex's house, and Gladys is kind of back to normal, but not perfect. She's really scary. But it is very, very much pulled from the look of Nicolas Cage. In Longlegs. So I can't give it too much credit because we already seen it. So all in all, I would say from a scare perspective, I don't want to go into how the movie ends and things like that in case you do want to watch it, because I do think it's worth watching. I think that it is something that is different. I think that it is a unique way of adding in witchcraft and also societal expectations and elements and stereotypes. I think there's a lot to unpack. Again, the homages to the Campbell soup thing. As Alex's parents are in this zombified state, he has to feed them Campbell soup. So it's this, I'm now the child taking care of my elder parents who can't feed themselves. And nothing will make you feel better from a cold than just a good old chicken soup. So that's where we get that really from. And then we have a lot of the nods to horror. So we have the Shining scene of them smashing the bathroom door. We have a zombie movie nod at the end. All of these kids are running through the neighborhood, basically wreaking havoc on these people's houses, and in a really zombie-like way. At the very ending, they catch up to Gladys and basically tear her apart, but is filmed almost exactly the same way as the Green Inferno. We have so many different things like that. And there's also many, many, many comments throughout the movie of consumerism, but specifically consumption. So it's a lot about drunkardness and overly sweet things. There's a lot of mention of Coca-Cola. Again, the processed food of Campbell soup, the actual names that we're seeing, and not just, movie style empty can of soup. So we have Coca-Cola, we have vodka, we have the actual drugs that the tweaker is taking, James. So there's a lot of different things to unpack from that perspective too. So again, this movie has really great rewatch quality. There's a lot to look out for. There's a lot to spot from a film perspective, done A+. However, the actual score that I will give it is a 3 out of 5. Let me explain. For the story itself, I would give it a 3 out of 5. I think that it is cool. It is something a little bit different. However, for originality, I would give it a 2. Because of the fact that we have so many of these movies that are talking about the politics in the background. They're really making a point to use horror as a platform to say, the world is scary and let's talk about it. I'm over it. I'm really over it. I think we all go to the movies to forget all of this stuff. And so the more that it's put into our faces, it's not an ignorance is bliss perspective. However, a little bit it is, I would say. So from the originality as well, just seeing so many stolen elements from Longlegs, and even just like there's a couple of triangles thrown around all these places, it just feels like this movie is a hodgepodge of a lot of different more recent horror movies, even The Witch. So for that reason, originality gets a 2. Again, you have kids that are running to this house that are almost possessed, that are in this trance-like state. You have all these things in the background. So that's why I really don't want it to come across that I'm shitting on this movie, but I wouldn't outwardly recommend it. For acting, I would give it a 4 out of 5. Everybody did their job besides the annoying kid. What else is new? For production, I would give it a 4 out of 5. This is a very well done movie. You can tell they have a pretty high budget. The actual filming of it is great, but we don't really see a whole lot of different locations. We see a gas station, we see the school, we see Justine's house, and even part of it. And then we see the outside of Archer's house and the inside of Alex's house. So we're just in this little bubble that feels like. And then for scares, this is a scary movie. There's a lot of good jump scares. Gladys is genuinely scary. So I'd give that a little bit of an edge at a 4 out of 5. This is not a movie that you would show to somebody who's watching horror for the first time. This is a little bit of a seasoned movie. So again, all in all, that gives it a 3 out of 5. I know that's pretty low, especially for the hype around this movie. I had very high expectations. I do like the fact that this movie, Barbarian and Companion, are all made by the same person, which is Zach Kreger, who was in Whitest Kids You Know. I talk all the time about how I really believe horror and comedy are truly starting to blend together, and I absolutely love it. I'm a huge fan of White as Kids You Know. I'm a huge fan of really stupid humor as well as stand-up. I think all of it is art, but I do think just the way that stand-up comedians sometimes get canceled, sometimes have these arguments about politics, sometimes they're pretty based on their political standing, and that's what they use for their comedy. That's what we're starting to see blend into horror, and I just wish it wouldn't. So again, I know that I am part of the minority. I understand, so please don't yell at me in the comments. It's the same sort of feeling that I had with Terrifier, where everybody loves it, but to me, the point is lost. So it's the same sort of thing here. I think I get the point. It's scary. It's good. This is a good movie. There are a lot of things that I would, if I was making it, obviously, I would do differently. There's a lot of things that I would appreciate having done a little bit differently. I would have focused more on the children and what is this supernatural element. We don't even figure out by the end of the movie how it works, where Gladys came from, what the whole backstory is on that. We just sort of accept that she's there, and then, spoiler alert, kids rip her apart, and then the narrator, whoever is narrating the story, which we also don't know who the narrator is, then comes to the point of saying, oh, these kids are now just starting to learn how to talk again. So they've never really woken up from this zombified state. So there again is a little bit of this like PTSD element, them running through the whole entire neighborhood at the end. This is an event that wreaks havoc on a neighborhood. Now we're just seeing it from the physical sense. So I know that this review is different because it's very wishy-washy, but that is really how this movie feels. I love getting the different people's perspectives. I love the scares of it. I need more of a story and less of a point, which sounds counterintuitive, but I hope you get what I mean. So again, all in all, I would give this a 3 out of 5. I think it's worth watching. I would love to rewatch it. I really love the fact that it was completely unexpected compared to the trailer, and the fact that we don't even know who Gladys is at all from the trailer. So, and again, from the bleeding over of Barbarian and Companion, it does, again, if we're talking about food, it tastes the same. So the consistency there is nice. So I will leave it there with this review before I continue to go down this rabbit hole. But if you have watched it, let me know what you thought about this movie. Let me know if you agree, disagree, somewhere in between. And again, thank you for listening, and I will see you next week.